Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to introduce Christian Lander today for this Authors at Google event. I think you all know Christian as the creator of the Stuff White People Like blog, and he is also now the author of the new book, Stuff White People Like, a definitive guide to the unique taste of millions. So Christian's blog has been described as more viral than the flu, which I think was a compliment. I think, like most of you in this room, I was introduced to the blog by getting forwarded it by at least half dozen of my closest friends and family, all within 24 hours. And then, of course, that led to the bickering of who sent it first and so on. But the most important point is it's really, really funny. So like any internet phenomenon, there have been spin-offs and imitations. I did a quick search and came up with dozens of similar blogs. Some of my favorites included Stuff Cajun People Like, Stuff Asperger People Like, and probably the most creative, White Stuff People Like. But today, we have the original, and it's my pleasure to introduce Christian Lander.
Thank you. Good job. I'm not going to get feedback off this one. So before I start, I just want to take a picture of this crowd because this is also new to me, so no one's going to believe me that I actually spoke to this many people. Let's see if I got that one. Perfect. Thank you for indulging me on that one. Yeah. So thanks for having me here. I'm kind of amazed at how many of you turned out. When I had my press tour announced, this was the stop that I was most excited about because I feel like I'm in the chocolate factory. Although, to be honest, I thought there'd be a lot more segues running around when I got up here. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, and I'm really excited for the question period because I always find that's the most fun. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about where this blog came from, how it started, and the sort of crazy ride that's happened. But before I do that, I want to let you know that Google was actually going to be an entry in the book, and I sat in front of my computer for about an hour trying to figure out the best way to put it into words. And what I had initially was that if you're communicating with someone and their email address ends in @gmail.com, it's a guarantee they're probably a white person. It can only be trumped by an @mac.com, or I guess an @me.com now. And I couldn't figure out where to go with the rest of it. And so I ended up cutting it, and I replaced it with the entry on red hair, which was a little closer to home for me. So the blog really sort of came about out of my own life. As you can probably tell, I am a white person. I grew up in Toronto, Canada, and I grew up in the middle of this city in a neighborhood called Riverdale. And when I moved in, or when my dad moved in, I was 1 year old, it was still very much a working class neighborhood. And throughout the 80s and 90s, property values went up. And all the working class people of my neighborhood were pushed out. They couldn't afford houses anymore, they didn't live there, and they left. And so Toronto, like a lot of cities, like San Francisco or Vancouver, what ended up happening is the only white people left, the only ones that, well, obviously I was a part of, or that I would meet, were pretty much exactly the people being described in this book, which is upper middle class, left-wing, liberal elites. So when I started the site, Stuff White People Like, these were the only type of white people I grew up with. And so that's where it came from, but it's come to mean a lot of other interesting things, and I'll talk about that a bit later. The other area this came out of is I am a graduate school dropout. I did 2 years of a PhD in film and literature, and I gave up. I said I just couldn't take it anymore. And what I found when I was there was it was a lot of people who were really, really intolerant of any other view besides their own. Meaning specifically, far left-wing academic was the only way to think. And anyone who thought differently, not that I'm necessarily a conservative or a conservative at all, but anyone who thought differently was shut up immediately. And it just drove me nuts to see people so close-minded in graduate school and professed to be open-minded because they supported progressive issues. And I'm like, no, that just means you support progressive issues. It doesn't mean you're actually open-minded. So I left, moved to Los Angeles, probably the farthest place you can get from graduate school. And I started work as an associate manager of corporate communications at a company called Schematic. They're an interactive agency in Culver City. And I was working there for 2 years. And one day in January of this year, January 18th of this year, my friend Miles and I were having an instant messenger conversation at work about the TV show The Wire. And we were both huge fans of The Wire. Obviously, it's in the book. And Miles, who's Filipino, and I needed to point that out because for those of you who have the book with you, post number 11 was written by Miles, not by me. Post number 11 is the post on Asian girls, which to date has over 5,000 angry comments on the site. And I just want to point out that it was written by Miles. And what's really funny about that post is, so the post makes a comment about people who are half white, half Asian being annoying. And this is what, I'll explain this. So this was when the site was being read by about 15 people. And this is kind of where we expected it to stay. It was written about a girl that Miles had kind of been dating and had really annoyed him. And so little did he know that she would be immortalized in print for the next few years. So that's where that comes from. But again, anyways. So we're having this instant messenger conversation about The Wire. And Miles says he doesn't trust any white person who doesn't watch the show. And, you know, I suppose I agreed with him on that one. And we started asking, we said, well, okay, so what are they doing? What are these white people doing instead of watching this show? And we started throwing things back and forth like yoga, going to plays, getting divorced, going to therapy. And I thought, okay, this is hilarious. It's blog time. So I just went to wordpress.com. Sorry, I guess. The reason is actually, this relates to Google. So Miles had sent me a copy of the video game NCAA Football 2007 under the condition that I blog about all of my games. And I'd hosted the blog on Blogspot, or Blogger, and it got shut down for potentially being a spam blog for some reason, and I wasn't able to access it for a couple of days, and so I was really annoyed, and that's why I switched over to WordPress. And so that's where I don't blame, hey, go ahead and boo, but, you know, so anyway. So I just went to WordPress, and I just typed in stuffwhitepeoplelike.com, and I thought it would be a really funny blog to follow up this insane college football blog that I had done. And I just started writing. And I honestly, when it started, thought that it was going to be read by Miles and about 4 of my friends, at most. I never expected it to be anything more than that. And I started writing, and I found that I had a lot more stuff to write about than just, the first entry was coffee, and it's in the book. And I found that I just had more stuff and just kept writing. And my friend Sean is in Victoria, BC. He's in design school. His major was magazine and book layout, and he needed a final project. And he wanted to turn my insane college football blog into a book. But the problem was the images I had were all such low resolution that it wasn't feasible. So I said, okay, Sean, here's what we'll do. I'll write as fast as I can, and we'll get to 50 entries as soon as possible. And we'll self-publish a tiny book in Victoria, BC, and we'll give it to friends and family for the rest of our lives. Because I think you have to do a minimum of 300 copies, and I don't really know that many people, so maybe the same gift over and over again. And so I tried to get to 50 as soon as possible. And by the time I got to about 20, 25, I thought, okay, this is pretty funny. I'm going to send this out to all my friends. Because usually I don't bother my friends with the things that I'm doing on the internet. And I sent it to all my friends, and I don't know that many people, so it's like 25 people. And then they sent it to their friends. And then they sent it to their friends. And they sent it to their friends. And next thing I knew, I was up to 1,000 hits a day. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, I need to put AdSense on here. See? So while I might have spurned you for the blog thing, I came back to you in pursuit of what I thought was going to be enough money to cover like a dinner a month or something. So when we got 1,000 hits a day, I said, okay, I'm going to transfer this to a private server. So, because WordPress won't let you run ads if it's hosted on WordPress. So I transferred it over to a private server, and it was up for, and I registered the domain stuffwhitepeoplelike.com and .org, because I thought it was really funny to have a .org because of moveon.org. And so I was going to have a whole thing about how funny that was. And so I moved it over to this private server, and it was up for 6 hours before it crashed. Because I guess the second you go from a .wordpress.com, and maybe you guys will take pleasure in this, to a regular .com, traffic spiked. And that day, it was 30,000 hits. And I was on a shared account. I don't know the full details of it, but like a shared account server. And it said, this account has been suspended for violations of our bandwidth policy. And so I called them up, and they were like, what are you doing on this site? Why do you have so much traffic? And I said, I'm running a WordPress blog. They're like, no, you must be running some sort of e-commerce engine or something. I'm like, no, it's a WordPress blog. And they told me how much it was going to cost to get it back up. And I was like, are you kidding me? I haven't made any money off of this. I'm not doing it. So I put it back onto WordPress with no ads, and that day I found out that it had been linked by Good Magazine and Comedy Central. And it just kept growing from there. It kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. People were calling me for interviews, and yeah, I was on the New York Times, the LA Times, and I could not believe this was happening. I hadn't sent out any ads. I hadn't begged any other popular bloggers to put it up. It was completely word of mouth, and it hit me, like a ton of bricks. So I could not believe what had happened. Then I kept saying to myself, okay, this is as big as it's going to get. I did an interview. Someone took a picture of me. It'll never get bigger than this. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the next thing I knew, literary agents were contacting me about turning it into a book. And this is the one part of the story that it's tough. For anyone who wants to be a writer, it's really, really hard to get a literary agent. It's really tough. You have to send in query letters and unsolicited manuscripts, and it's really, really difficult. And I could not believe that here I was, not even having tried. And I'm a failed academic writer. I'm a failed journalist. Like, I tried to make as a writer before, and I'd failed repeatedly. And here I am starting this blog as a joke, and I wasn't even trying. And literary agents are literally knocking down my door to try and get me to sign with them. And so I had a bunch of them contact me, and I didn't want to tell this story because it's going to be on YouTube, so I won't use any names. But I live in LA, and I don't drive a car. I ride a bike. Yeah, that's right. The post on bicycles is actually a photo of my bike. It is a fixed gear bike, of course. And I know, I can't even help it. Now, the book's really about all these things I do that I can't stop myself from doing. And so anyways, a lot of the literary agents are part of huge conglomerations, that represent actors and directors and stuff like that. So most of the big ones got in touch with me and wanted to talk to me. So I took a day off work, and I biked to Beverly Hills to meet with these talent agents. And it was so funny in the meeting, they were like, well, you can just valet. And I go, what? I have a bike. And they had no idea what to do with it. Like, I guess you can lock it up out front. And the thing is, in Beverly Hills, half the agents, there's these big driveways, so there's nothing in front. So I'd have to bring it into the desk. And on more than one occasion, they thought I was a courier when I went in, to talk to them. And so eventually I chose an agent and I had a book deal. And so until this point, a lot of people had sort of liked me. They were like, hey, here's this guy, he just started a blog, and isn't it amazing that he got all this traffic? It's fantastic. No ads on his site, so he's not making any money, so I don't hate him. And then I got a book deal. And the second I got a book deal, everyone hated me. And so all these websites and bloggers and people writing and just tell me how awful I am started attacking me, and it was really, really strange. Because this is happening at the end of February. So I barely had a blog up for a month and a half. And I'd already got a book deal, and I'd already got a legion of people who hated me. And it was so strange to deal with, because it was like, what did I do? Why do you all hate me so much? And it really bothered me for a little while to see people taking time of their publication to sit down, write, and publish an article explaining why I'm not funny, or why I'm a terrible writer, or anything along those lines. And it took me a while to get over it, and it still would bother me. And the same thing happened on the site, where a lot of the comments, and I don't know if any of you have read the comments on the site, they're interesting, to say the least. Usually the comments would either be something that's horrifically racist and then brilliantly responded to by a reader on the site. But there started to be a lot more comments saying how awful I was, saying you are a terrible writer, you're not funny, all this stuff, and I couldn't read them anymore. It was too much. So I stopped reading the comments, which was a real letdown, because every time I'd see it, it would just get to me, because I'd had a blog for a month and a half. I wasn't used to any of this. And then I told this to someone who'd emailed the site, and they sent me a link to a Cat Williams video. I don't know if any of you know who he is, the stand-up comic, about how it's haters' job to hate, and you just have to let them do their job. And if anything, you should strive to have more haters. And so I think he says if you have 18 haters, you should strive for 20 by the end of the summer. And so that one really, really helped. And so eventually, this is probably the best part, I got to quit my job. And I quit my job at the end of March because I had to write the book. I had 31 days to write the book. And it wasn't a problem. It was really, really strange that I had no writer's block whatsoever. I had all of this stuff just built up inside, ready to go, and just went right through it, got it done. It was published on July 1st. It's out now, and now I'm here. So that's kind of the story of how the blog exploded. And it can happen to anyone. I mean, obviously, I'm living proof, but literally started on WordPress, and it just went from there. And it was completely viral. And so people have always asked, they always say, well, why did it get so popular? And this one's a tough one for me to answer. Because if a huge company, with tons and tons of money said, here's $500 million, replicate the results you had with this blog. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. It would be impossible. And it's really funny because you start to see that people have a really good ability to see through projects on the internet that are just done to try and make you famous. And so I was at a conference in Boston called ROFLCon, and it was put to... It is the top conference for my industry, which is internet humor. It was put on by students at Harvard, and it was fantastic. And they invited me, Tron guy was there, who, by the way, is fantastic. He's awesome, one of the nicest people I've ever met. The One Red Paperclip guy, a bunch of people who do webcomics. And they all said the same thing, that all of them had found the success because they started something because they thought it was funny. And they weren't trying to be, have millions of hits. They weren't trying to be famous. They weren't trying to make it happen. They believed in it. And so it's really funny that people can really see through this stuff. They can see through someone trying to draw attention to themselves who don't really believe in what they're doing. And so, once again, I guess the best advice I have is do what you believe in on a blog and don't try. And next thing you know, you'll have a book deal. So the other thing about why it's popular, and I've sort of had to craft explanations because I still don't really know why. And I've been able to craft a few that sound reasonably smart. And I don't know if I necessarily believe them, but I think one of the reasons it grew was because it's in this weird list format. The list isn't closed. There's a reason it doesn't say the definitive guide to 150 things that white people like. It's an open-ended list. And I think the reason it grew was a lot of people, not only could they relate to the things on the list, but they could talk about what was missing. And I get a lot of emails of people telling me what's missing. And I'll tell you right now of two things that aren't going to go on the list. One is mayonnaise. It is not going on the list. If any of you have sent me an email in the past year telling me to write about mayonnaise, I'm not going to do it. And the other one is I'm not adding the blog itself to the list. It's not going to happen. I spent too much time in graduate school hearing the word meta, and I can't do it again. Oh, I see some people hate that word as well. Fantastic. So I guess that was probably the best answer I could come up with. But I think the other thing was that what the book, and I'm going to sound really pretentious here, and I guess that's to be expected, is the book, it talks about white people as, it's more of a class than a race thing. And I think a lot of people will agree with that as you read through it. But the other thing it's fundamentally about is a different generation of people who still have the same desire for status and competition among neighbors. But unlike in the past where that competition and status was determined by material wealth, like the size of your house or how much your car cost or the size of your diamond ring, it's been replaced by authenticity, environmental awareness, and it's sort of been replaced by a different type of status. Because I don't know about you, but I'm in LA. I'm not impressed when I see a Bentley because I know it gets 8 miles to the gallon. Like, that's awful. I am impressed when I see plug-in cars. Or I found out someone was telling me about the guy who's driving this GM fuel cell vehicle. Unbelievable. Water is exhaust. That stuff impresses me. And so it's about this sort of shift that we're still as competitive as ever, in saying this T-shirt is more vintage than I'm trying to find someone with a vintage shirt here than that one, or things along those lines. And I think that really comes through in the book, is that it's about competition. So I've picked 3 things from here that I think are probably applicable to you guys. I have an entry on gifted children, but I felt that would just be pointless in this room, I'm guessing. So first entry, number 40, is on Apple products, which doesn't seem to be a problem for this room. So I'm just going to read 3, so I promise I won't take up too much of your time just by reading. It's surprising that it took all the way to number 40 to call out Apple products. Truthfully, it might be more productive to devote the entire 40s to the various Apple products that integrate into a white person's life. Plain and simple, white people don't just like Apple, they love Apple and need it to operate. On the surface, you'd ask yourself how white people could love a multi-billion-dollar company with manufacturing plants in China and mass production, and that contributes to global pollution through the manufacture of consumer electronic devices. The simple answer, Apple products tell the world you're creative and unique. They are an exclusive product line used only by every white college student, designer, writer, English teacher, and hipster on the planet. You see, a long time ago, Macs were super popular among layout artists and graphic designers. Then Apple released Final Cut Pro, and it became a standard for film editor. As a result, lots of creative industries used Apple computers instead of PCs. And eventually, people started making the connection, and all of a sudden, all white people need to have a Mac. When you ask white people about Macs, they'll say, oh, it's so much better than Windows. It's just easier to use. They're so cutting edge, and so forth. What's amazing is that white people need to meet people who use Windows to justify themselves paying an extra $500 for a pretty-looking machine. It's also important that white people are reminded of their creativity. Remember, you need a Mac to creatively check email, creatively check websites, and creatively watch DVDs on an airplane. White people also need iPods, iPhones, Apple TV, Airport, and anything else that Apple will produce because they need to express their uniqueness by purchasing everything that a publicly traded company produces. Apple products also come with stickers. Some people put them on their computers, some people put them on Windows, but to take this to the pinnacle of whiteness, you need to put the Apple sticker in the rear window of your Prius, Jetta, BMW, Subaru four-wheel drive station wagon, or Audi. You then need to drive to a local coffee shop, Starbucks will do in a pinch, and set up your Apple for the world to see. Thankfully, the Apple logo on the back will light up. So even in a dark place, people can see how unique and creative you and the 5 other people next to you doing the exact same thing truly are. I had some more to go, but that was such a good ending. I'm just going to ignore it. I'm just going to let that go. That was I own an Apple computer. I'm not even going to try and lie. Although you can trump it if you have a Linux machine. Everyone wins that. Now, I thought you guys might appreciate this. Number 82, hating corporations. I don't know, it felt particularly useful being here. Don't worry, you guys are on the okay list. One of the more popular white person activities of the past 15 years has been attempting to educate others on the evils of multinational corporations. White people love nothing more than explaining to you how Walmart, McDonald's, Microsoft, or Halliburton is destroying the Earth's culture and resources. While the growth of multinational corporations can be attributed to a number of complex social, economic, and political factors, many white people prefer to take the word of 2 trusted sources, No Logo and Adbusters. No Logo, published in 2000, has been responsible for more white person enlightenment than any book since the burning at the Library of Alexandria. By reading this one magic book, white people are able to get a full grasp on the evils of multinationals and then regurgitate them to friends and family. Advanced white people will supplement No Logo with a subscription to Adbusters, where they'll learn how to subvert corporate culture and return it to the masses. Specifically, this means taking ads and redoing them to create a negative message about a product. And as a side note, on the way in here, someone had spray painted a McFart logo on the back of one of the traffic signs down the street. I'm not sure what that accomplished. It was just right on the street out there, but I'm not going to McDonald's after this. Apparently, the belief is that when other people see this ad, they'll be hit with an epiphany that their entire existence has been a Matrix-style manufactured universe. If you plan to engage in lengthy conversations or get high with white people, it's recommended that you read No Logo or an issue of Adbusters. Failing that, it's acceptable to buy a copy to leave on your coffee table. When white people see it, they'll recognize you as someone who can see through the advertising and has a proper perspective on life. Warning, when engaging in a conversation about corporate evils, it is important to never, ever mention Apple computers, Target, or IKEA in the same breath as the companies mentioned earlier. White people prefer to hate corporations that don't make the stuff they like. And the last one I'm going to read is number 91, San Francisco. This is a bit of a long one, but it's particularly funny to me, so hopefully it's funny to you guys too. San Francisco is one of the top US destinations for white people in terms of both travel and living. It's universally agreeable and is a safe discussion topic for any situation. White people like to vacation in San Francisco because it has beautiful architecture, which is in the book, and fantastic food, and it's near the water. They like to live in San Francisco because of its abundance of nonprofit organizations, expensive sandwiches, and wine, its political outlook, and most important, its diversity. Since many white people either live in, plan to move to, or closely identify with San Francisco, it's imperative that you know how best to deal with them. The city of San Francisco has a very multicultural population that ranges from white to gay to Asian. Within white culture, this is known as ideal diversity, since it provides both exotic restaurants and preserves property values. The presence of gays and Asians is imperative as it provides two of the key resources most necessary for white success and happiness. However, it's important to be aware of the fact that regions outside of San Francisco feature many people who are not white, gay, or Asian. They're greatly appreciated during the census, but white people are generally very happy that they stay in places like Oakland and Richmond. This enables white people to feel good about living near people of diverse backgrounds without having to directly deal with troublesome issues like income gaps or failing schools. Still, the presence of other minorities is welcomed by white people for so many more reasons than just statistics. Much in the way that white people in Brooklyn feel a strong and unfounded connection with the notorious B.I.G., white people in San Francisco feel the need to identify with rappers from the East Bay. Interestingly enough, the further they venture from San Francisco, the stronger their need to represent their region. Quote, "Oh man, I went to the Too Short show last night. So hyphy, man. So hyphy. You should come by sometime and we'll ghost ride the Prius." When you're presented with statements like this, the best response is to say, "Berkeley is close to Oakland." And the white person will likely nod and throw up some sort of West Side hand sign. Though it's exceptionally easy to put someone from San Francisco in a good mood, there are some caveats. When talking to a white person who lives in San Francisco, it's best not to bring up New York City. Though they live in a world-class city, San Franciscans have a crippling inferiority complex about New York, and even hinting at that will make them very sad or very defensive. Fortunately, there is a foolproof method for returning the conversation to a positive, trust-building tone. No matter how much you've offended someone from San Francisco, you can always make them feel better by asking them how they feel about Southern California. They will instantly talk of how it is filled with crime, pollution, hegemonic culture, and the wrong kind of white people. Quote, "I swear, California is like two separate countries. I'm so thankful I live in the cultural center of the West Coast." This will allow them to reassert their superiority and leave the conversation with a positive feeling about themselves and about you. So that's pretty much all I have to say. Question period's always the most fun. Is our process now for opening it up? Microphone down there. If anyone wants to ask, I will be happy to answer.
Hey, so before your talk, I decided to do some research because it's been a while since I visited the blog. And I was caught off guard by your choice of New Balance shoes as something white people like. Because I typically associate that with homeless people who are begging for more change.
Okay, that's funny for like 15 different reasons. Number one, that says something about the relative affluence about homeless people in this part of the country. Because in Los Angeles, most homeless people have sort of plastic bags. So, I mean, good for San Francisco. I didn't make that connection, but this is good to know. This is really true. That's fantastic. Well, that'll give you credibility as well with the New Balance. The shoes of the streets, literally. Anybody else have a question for me? There's good ones in here. Okay, good.
So as you can tell, I probably live in the Mission, and I do. So I was looking at real estate this weekend, and I found a dirt lot in Bayview. It's cheap, and I was wondering what your views were on me starting an artist community there. I, of course, would not live there. I would commute there during the day. Yep. And possibly host dinner parties at night. And What are your views on using shipping containers? Because God forbid I'd want to use new materials to create a living space.
So you'd be using like those prefab houses? That
No.
just like a regular shipping container?
Yeah. Oakland.
With stuff in it?
Yeah, no, I'd put stuff in it. Port of Oakland sells them for $1,200. I can get some on eBay.
So let me just get... This sounds like an excellent plan, first of all.
Thank you.
But let me just get straight with the ideas. You're going to purchase a dirt lot.
Yep. 50 feet by 100.
How big are shipping containers?
They're 40 feet. I don't know how wide.
Okay. And then you're going to put a shipping container in there.
Yep.
And you're going to put artists in it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, because the mission doesn't have so many artists now,
Yeah.
so I feel like that's the next place to go.
What about if you close the door on the shipping container?
It gets really hot.
Well, poke some holes in it. And then transported those artists somewhere else.
To East Bay?
Like,
Richmond, maybe?
there you go. Or even the Midwest,
Hyphy in a box.
It just like you drop them somewhere, and it's like if they return back, they really were meant to live here. If they don't, then, that old adage about birds, but do it with artists this time.
All right.
But I think this is a very good plan.
Thank you.
And I think that you could probably get some local graffiti artists to spray paint the outside of the shipping
Excellent
container.
idea.
And put an anarchy logo on it.
Ooh. Thank you, Christian.
I support this plan. These are some really good ideas. Any other questions? There's so many of you. You can yell it out from the top row if you want. I'll repeat it.
What's next?
Oh, I hate this question. Yeah, sure, movies, why not? At lunch? It's sort of tough to figure out what's next, because, this whole thing started on January 18th of this year. So, I've barely had time to figure out what this is, let alone what's next. So, I guess, I'm really just hoping to be a comedy writer somewhere, somehow. And that's pretty much it. I don't have any bigger ambitions than that. Can't run for office because I'm Canadian. But...
What's your favorite?
Favorite thing on the list?
Yeah, do you have any to stick out?
Man, this is so tough. I like so many things on the list. I like beards. I like red hair. I like sweaters, vintage T-shirts. I'm not wearing New Balance today. My favorite on the list, being the only white person around. That's one of the entries, because I grew up in Chinatown, and so I would always get dim sum on Saturdays. And if there's another white person there, I'd be so pissed off. I'd be like, they're gonna make it extra bland today. I know it, I can't come back here. So that's probably my favorite thing on the list, I'd say. Yeah.
Hey, I just moved from Canada, and I also I live in the city, so to join my friends, and I just bought a fixed gear, but I also need a messenger bag, I think.
Yes.
But I really don't know what kind I should get. Does it need to match the colors on my fixed
No.
gear, or-
This is a fantastic question. You don't want to screw this up. So your first instinct might be just get whatever messenger bag you can, and that's a huge mistake. What you want to do is you want to find the ones that are made from the recycled content of those wraps that were on trucks. Like where they've taken old packing material and turned them into messenger bags. It's like 55 different colors. I don't know what the brand name is, I'm sorry. I'm sure someone in here does.
Freitag.
Freitag, there you go.
Freitag.
Someone else want to come up here to answer these questions? I feel like you guys would do a better job than I would. So that's the bag you need.
Thank you.
Try and get one with the seatbelt buckle too. Trust me, you'll know it when you see it. Good question?
Yes, okay, so one observation as a person who started reading the blog this year was that I feel like Black people have kind of been writing this blog on our own for even today, some of the things asking questions. But so one thing we thought about was, have you ever considered having outsiders' perspective on some of the things that maybe aren't completely obvious that I liked?
About, so the question is, it was a two-part question. First was explaining how I stole the blog from black people. I mean, it's legitimate. There's historical precedence for this, you know. And the second question is about opening it up for outsiders. To write about white people, right? Outsiders. Right? It's interesting though. From the blog perspective, this answer is not going to be as funny as some of the other ones. But when you start writing from an outsider perspective, it changes a lot of the politics around the blog. Not that there's an awful, you know, I mean, it is humor first and foremost. But it was really funny when the site had started. I mean, obviously, I'm just some dude, copywriter guy in Culver City. No one knew who I was. A lot of people were trying to guess my ethnicity. And a lot of people thought I was black. Someone wrote, honestly, what would have been a 3-page essay on why they thought I was Asian. And it changes the politics. For a lot of people, when they find out, it changes the politics of the blog and of the book. So I'd be happy to open it up, but it'd be really interesting to see what that does to people's perception of things. And I think part of the trend that came out of these, as was mentioned in the intro, was all the people who've done the spin-off blogs, is a lot of it's done from obviously an insider perspective, and it's done in multiple ways, but not meant to be in a demeaning or, you know what I mean, an upsetting way. And it's not meant to enforce stereotypes that are meant to keep people down, but rather find these odd commonalities that people share. But I'm always happy to open it up. I'm sorry for stealing the idea. I wasn't aware of that until now. I just kidding. Yeah.
So I had a question. What is the one article or one piece that you've written that you've gotten the most personal flack for maybe hitting too close to home with your friends?
Oh, with my friends. Knowing what's best for poor people is probably the one that bothered my friends the most because, so in Canada, there's the political system, there's multiple parties. There's essentially 3. There's Conservative, Liberal, and then NDP. And NDP is far left. That's what I grew up voting, and that's what I still vote now. And they are the #1 party for knowing what's best for poor people. And I think the comment that says, if poor people were given money and education, they'd be exactly like white people, was the thing that really bothered my friends the most. Oh, and scarves. That bugged them too. Scarf with a t-shirt, what's that all about? I still haven't figured it out. Yeah.
Do you think a lot of the success of the blog is white people like microphones? Apparently I'm not white enough, so, and now I've forgotten my question, but do you think a lot of the success of the blog is that, I mean, typically having grown up white, having liked things that white people like and so forth, I mean, we're not used to, as sort of a majority culture, looking at ourselves and stepping outside of ourselves. And I think that this is sort of the first time there's been something really in the mainstream culture. I mean, do you think that's part of the success?
Well, I think what's interesting about it is that, so the term white people, obviously, there's a lot of white people, like an awful lot of white people. And as this majority culture, it's not as often broken up into these smaller sections. So the white people I'm talking about here are certainly not the people who voted Republican in 2000 and 2004. So it's a very different specific set of white people who are being described in a sort of outsider culture way. I think there was a sort of a strange connection to it, as say, I'm not that white person who voted for Bush, It's like I am that white person who stole my New Balances off a homeless guy. But there was a connection to it, and it still surprises me. I mean, I wish I had more explanations for why this happened because I still don't know. But it's been great.
There was a humor website that became very popular when I was a freshman in college. I'm not even sure if it's still up, but I had this vague sense of deja vu when I started reading stuff white people like, and the website that I'm talking about was called blackpeopleloveus.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if that was in any way your inspiration or influenced you.
That site is still up. And that site is one of the best examples of legitimate political satire I've ever seen in my entire life. And I remember looking at it when I was probably the same age. And I guess probably subconsciously it still does. But it was so amazingly bang on. And it still rings so true today. It's fantastic. It's an amazing site. If you haven't checked it out, do it. All of you seem to have computers. Do it right now.
So I'm really enjoying this dialogue. And you answer the question of what are you going to do next with the... So I would like to suggest a follow-on Ask a White Person blog.
Oh, I see. I feel like, I'm trying to think what questions still remain. I did have one idea for no, Actually, that's not a good idea. Never mind. I could possibly do that, but yeah. I'm still figuring it out. Anyone else? Kim, you promised a question. You can make up another one. Sit. Oh, I think we got one, or are you leaving early?
But I liked it.
Thank you. I'm not sure what more I can really tell you guys other than I strongly recommend writing. Oh. Question is, what's my favorite knockoff? I have to say, it's the white stuff people like. It's a blog, and it lists stuff like flour and like cocaine and sugar, and so it's something that never crossed my mind until someone did it, and then just the title just knocked me off my seat, just laughing so hard at white stuff people like. I hadn't even thought about it, but I think that was probably my favorite. Oh wait, sorry.
Might be hard to see me.
Oh.
So the site is really funny. How do you?
That's a legitimate burn on me right there.
How do you keep the site genuinely funny? You know, I can imagine there are people who get really offended by some of the stuff, and then it gets political, or, you know, how do you stay away from anger and rant and political trouble, and, you know, walk the fine line?
I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest, spending time in graduate school where you offend everybody by everything that you do all the time was usually a good way to sort of help me figure out how to walk the line. But I don't really have a full explanation for it. I think I mean, it's pretty easy to tell what really is going to offend people. You know what I mean? And what is legitimately offensive, you know, in terms of what's being written and what's said. So I don't know. I mean, I guess just being graduate school made me hyper-aware. Pointlessly hyper-aware about, like, people get offended at the shape of food. You know what I mean? Like, not even kidding. Trust me. Liberal arts PhD. That's where it's at. Yeah.
How does sudden success affect white people?
The question is, how does sudden success affect white people? This is a good question. Well, I came here in a private jet. No, actually, I came here in a Mercury Marquis. I don't know. It's really it's really strange because it's been seven months, right, since I typed one thing into WordPress. So it's hard to be effective. Like, it still feels really strange. Like, if someone will ask me, they'll say, you know, can you sign a copy of the book? And when I was an undergrad, I'm one of those obsessive people who will not write in textbooks. It's all, as you can see, like these little Post-it notes all the way through. And I would get books from the library, and I would see people who've written notes in the margins. And I don't support the death penalty for anything except that. Like, it would drive me nuts. And so it's so weird for people to ask for, like, a picture with me or an autograph. I'm like, the same guy I was 7 months ago. You know what I mean? And so, I don't know. And I guess knowing how fast things move, I'm enjoying it as much as I can, but it doesn't last forever, and it can't last forever. And so, quite frankly, I'm amazed it's lasted this long. So, I guess that answers your question. I'm a bigger jerk now than I ever was. Anybody else? Yeah.
What TV shows do you watch?
The question is, what TV shows do I watch? I don't own a TV. No, I watch everything on Adult Swim all the time. Aqua Teen, Squidbillies, Tim and Eric Awesome Show. Like, these are the stuff that I watch, and I absolutely adore them. A lot of the shows I like are canceled because of low ratings. Arrested Development, The Wire, that sort of stuff. Weeds, I like that show. The Office, UK edition though, right? No. I just kidding. I love The Office, and then this is just a shout out to the old Kids in the Hall. Just because it was when I was a kid, they all lived in my neighborhood, and I thought they were all such heroes of mine, and I'd run into them in the park, and I would just freak out like they were Axl Rose. I liked Guns N' Roses when I was younger. Yeah.
Where should I go on vacation?
Where should you go on vacation? Oh man, it's a fantastic question. First of all, have you lined up any volunteer opportunities abroad? because quite frankly, it's a little selfish of you to talk about taking a vacation when you could be helping. So that first, well, provided that all of those opportunities fall through, you didn't pass background checks, I think you should probably go to, you should visit Buddhist temples in Thailand. You would be the first white person to do that. Ever.
Should I shave my hair when I go there and like wear the...
Not when you go there, when you come back. Come on. Like, you have to go there, you have to come back transformed and then tell everybody how you were transformed. You had a spiritual awakening, at the foot of Buddha in Bangkok. Trust me, this is good advice. Anybody else? Yeah.
Besides Canadian indie rock and Swedish pop, what sort of music should I listen to impress my peers?
Oh, this is a good question about what music should you listen to impress your peers besides Canadian indie rock and Swedish pop. This is the one chance where I can establish some really awesome credibility. So my last year, I used to live in Montreal. I went to McGill University in Quebec. And last year, for a couple months, my roommate was the lead singer of the Arcade Fire. So I got to see them before they were big. So that's the coolest thing I've done in my entire life. And that gets me more credibility than anything else. Swedish pop's good, but I think you should listen to reggaeton. I'm not even joking. This is all that I listen to now. It's really good. You can stream from LA Latino 96.3, which is my favorite station by far. I'm not joking. This is my favorite kind of music. But that's what I would recommend strongly. I can really talk. I mean, if anyone questions my loyalty about this, bring it on. My favorite kind of music.
What's on your T-shirt?
Oh, I wore this one special. Cal Berkeley. It was a tough decision. Oh, good. I'm glad there's some booze. I got a master's degree from the University of Arizona, so I'm very willing to boo it as well. But yeah, and it's vintage too. But yeah, I wore it special for this because it's going to be up here. Good question. This is great. I used to be so in graduate school, I used to teach public speaking. And I was really nervous about talking here because it was going to be on YouTube, and I feel like some of my old students were going to watch it and write in and tell me how terrible I was. But I did win 2006 Public Speaking Instructor of the Year. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Beat out 8 other people. Anybody else? Yeah. What are my thoughts about Google? Well, earlier I sort of talked about my frustration about when Blogger blocked me from that account when I was really getting my college football blog going. So I was a little upset, but on the site, if you take a look at the site, the official email address for the site is stuffwhitepeoplelike@gmail.com. So I'm a pretty big fan of Google. Can any of you guys get me Android for my phone? Before it comes out? I'm sick of Windows Mobile. I would really, really like to have Android on my phone. That's what I was hoping for. I'm all set? All right, well, look, guys, I can't thank you enough for having me up here. This was great. Thank you so much.